In today's episode, I'm going to explain how I train when I'm pressed for time. I believe today's episode is going to be short, it's going to be concise, but more so help all entrepreneurs and people who are often overwhelmed, pressed for time, mentally manage and physically execute their training more efficiently. I think one of the biggest problems I see in a lot of busy people is the first thing that gets affected in someone's health and fitness routine is the frequency of their training and the quality of their training, which can then have a ripple effect on what and how much someone eats. What do I mean by that? A lot of people who do not train or all of a sudden take their foot off the pedal with their training start eating shit because the all or nothing mentality creeps in. I think it's one of the biggest challenges, as I've said multiple times on this podcast, globally, certainly in high performers. If they can't do something perfect, they don't do it at all. And one of the most common challenges that we provide pinpoint solutions for inside Built to Last is helping people manage their training optimally every week, every season across a calendar year. Because I'm yet to coach anyone whose week is the same, whether it's a family curveball, professional curveball, travel, social commitment, business meeting that someone has to attend to at last minute notice. It happens, certainly in your 40s, 50s and 60s. And if you run a business, certainly that involves travel and meeting clients and team, you'll know exactly what I mean. Same with family. If you've got a partner, children, you'll know there are curveballs, whether it's children off sick, something your wife or your husband's asking you to do, it can affect how much time you have in your week. But I believe there is always a solution, no matter how busy you are, for finding a way to train every week across the year. There's 168 hours in a week, minus your sleep, and irrelevant of long hours at work, time with children, and social time, I don't believe anyone is that busy that they cannot train 2 to 3 times a week. If not, for me, it says a lot about how much you value you and your body and your health in particular. So I think this is going to be really relevant if you're someone like many of our clients who absolutely love training. Many of our clients are ex-athletes, they've played sport in the past, and they love training. But their standards have dropped just a little bit short, or some even bigger, because they've let business get in the way and dedicated too much time to other people's agendas. And they've had kids, and all of a sudden they're like, how do I manage my training? How can I still train like an athlete, be in shape, and manage all of this? And I don't think I've coached anybody in the last 6 years that can train 1 hour sessions every week without fail. Even if people have got a very, very a big time allowance for their training, there's going to be certain weeks where that isn't possible. So I've broken it down into 5 steps because this happens to me. There are multiple weeks. And for example, I've just come off a summer where every week involves some form of travel, family or social commitment, a business opportunity or challenge, last minute firefighting, whatever it is. I think it was one of the most complex summers that I had to navigate with lots going on personally and professionally, but I still wanted to make sure I got my training in. And there wasn't, as I shared with my community, there wasn't one session, I don't think, over the summer, which was as long as it normally is. So the 5 steps. Step 1 is treat it like a business meeting that you've had to cut short. If you run a business, you'll know there's going to be some meetings that you might have initially intended to be 30 minutes or an hour, and then something cropped up that meant you had to compress that meeting, which means, or would have meant, that you've had to make that meeting more effective. It's like, how can I get the most beneficial outcome from the time that I have available? How can I save the fluff in that meeting? Do the same with your training when you press for time. Treat it like a business meeting. I think sometimes with business meetings and sessions, we have this universal rule that they've got to be exactly 60 minutes. It's fucking bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Like, why can't you get what you need done in 40 minutes or 47 minutes, whether it's training or meeting? A lot of the time, we will just naturally adapt the session or the meeting to meet that deadline because that's what it is in the calendar. But if we know we haven't got a full 60 minutes, how can we utilize whatever time we have, like, a really, really organized meeting, but for your session? Right? So if you can only train for 20 or 30 minutes, treat it like a fast track meeting where it was just straight to the chase, as I'll come on to the other points. And make sure it's scheduled in your calendar. Said many times before, what gets scheduled gets done. What gets mentally planned relies on willpower, and it doesn't last. Second step, before you go into that session, remove all distractions totally and breathe. What do I mean by remove all distractions? And I've pulled multiple clients up on this over the years. If you know your time is extremely precious on a given day where you're training, the last thing that you should have popping up just before the session or certainly during the session is email notifications, WhatsApp notifications, phone calls coming in. It's a distraction. And if your time is compressed, that's going to gobble up into the time that you have to actually train, which is going to make that shorter session even more inefficient. And for me, absolutely pointless, where you'll simply be ticking a box. You might think it's efficient because you're getting it done. And some would argue, yeah, but you're getting something in. Is that better than nothing? Potentially, yes. But I believe you normalize mediocre training if you are sort of skimming through workouts and you're letting email notifications and WhatsApps and calls get in the way of time for you. I think it says a lot about your self-respect and your self-discipline if you are letting distractions and other people's agendas come into your time for you. You would never, ever let other people interfere or come in meetings if you are having a concrete one-to-one meeting with someone, with a client, with a team member, and people are coming in throughout the meeting. You'd set boundaries. So set boundaries for yourself in your session, whether you're training for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, and I promise you'll get so much more out of it. Thirdly, this is what I impacted with a client on one of our group trainings the other day. Adapt expectations. I personally adapt my expectations. So just like I did over the summer, if I know my head just simply isn't in the game for a longer session or don't have that time available, I'll adapt my expectations. I think this is what a lot of people either don't know how to do or don't do. Certainly all or nothing characters. They are just absolutely deluded that if they have business demands and commitments through the roof, and they've got a lot of people vying for their attention, whether it's their partner, their children, friends, team, clients, and they've got a lot on, which is something I hear a lot in my coaching on social media and people who apply to work with us, etc. They just don't adapt their expectations. So what I do is I'd be more realistic about how much progress I can possibly make during a period where I know work commitments and priorities for other projects and people are at an all-time high. Because you only have so much energy, you only have so much willpower. No matter how fit or strong you are, something's got to give. So, for example, over the summer, I knew that I wasn't or didn't want to be quite as lean and ripped, ironically, across the summer as what I normally like to be. I wanted to be naturally allow myself to put on a couple of pounds, about 4 pounds I'd put in over the summer, and get as strong as I could knowing that I would just want to lift a bit more, eat a little bit more food, and be okay with that. Because I knew I couldn't train as long as I normally do. And I don't mean like, excessive training. It's just normally I like to train for an hour or so, really all in weights. I couldn't train that long, or didn't plan to train that long. I didn't want to. But I trained for 40 to 50 minutes max. But I adapted my expectations. Even with food, I adapted my expectations. I was okay with being a little bit more relaxed at the weekends, knowing that if I wasn't carrying a touch more body fat, that's okay. But one of the most disempowering things is to not manage your expectations. And a lot of people, and you might be listening to this, be one of those people. They say they want a world-class body, they want to get ripped, they want to get lean, or they want to get really strong, they want to get in the best shape of their life. But time they can actually dedicate, or more so, they're willing to dedicate to their training, totally contradicts that. And that's where you lose confidence. So for me, even if you have to lower the bar a little bit with your training expectations and workout expectations, that's okay. You're still going to feel empowered, and you're still going to have the opportunity to complete quality work, but maybe be in a slightly lower gear in terms of your overall expectations with your health and fitness. So adapt your expectations, I would say, around your health and fitness and your body around that time, but more so within the workout also. Step 4, again, I don't think a lot of people do this. Set a clear intention for the session. What is your intention? What do I mean by that? Even if I'm having a shorter session, I will have one clear intention of the exact weight that I want to lift on every exercise within my workout. So I've got a target to aim for. So if my time is compromised, the outcome that I'm striving towards isn't, even if it's lower volume. So I would set a clear weight target. So I'm not drifting off, I'm not getting distracted. I know that if I'm in there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I know exactly what I'm aiming for. Even with cardio, if it's a cardio conditioning session, a running session, and it's shorter, set a clear intention of what you are working towards. It will give you emotional energy, give you mental energy, especially if you're an entrepreneur and a business owner. You're going to be target driven. You're going to be competitive. So create that competition within yourself. At least it's going to give you something to work towards. I guarantee, and I'm yet to coach anyone who isn't like this, this is when you're at your absolute best, when you have something to hunt or someone to hunt. Okay? The last step, execute the warm-up and the actual session with full focus, concentration, and intention. I bore our clients to death all the time about the importance of, when you're actually lifting, are you fully focused? Are you concentrating from before the set, as in when you're about to approach the bar or the dumbbell? And are you staying super switched on and concentrated from the start of rep 1 to the very end of the set? It makes enormous difference to how much you lift. Enormous. If your mind is focused and concentrated, your body is in a greater position to stay engaged. And if your goal is to lift as much as you physically can, your body has to stay engaged and intentful. I said it many times before, plaster it all over my social media. Intent. If you're going to do it all in. You're going to do it all in. If your time is compromised and you're giving up, or dedicating, a better word, more time for you in a workout, do it with intent. I guarantee when you're with a client, you're intentful. You listen, you're attentive, you're enthusiastic. You don't let anyone else get in the way of that conversation or that service for that client or that project for that client. Those are for other people. Do the same for you. Concentrate, operate with full focus and intent. And more specifically with your training, this is what I do when my time is poor or pressured, sorry. So when my time is extremely compromised in a weight session in particular, I will just do one hard work set maximum on every exercise. Whatever the style of the session is, whether it's a straight set session, superset, tricep, giant set. I'm a big fan of full body and extended set sessions to get more bang for your buck. I will still make sure that there's one set that is pretty much balls to the wall. But what I would do is make sure I do 1 to 2 very short warm-up sets before an actual work set. So for example, if I was doing a strength session and I might usually do 3 hard work sets on a squat, 3 hard work sets on a chest press, 3 hard work sets on a deadlift, 3 hard work sets on a shoulder press, I would make sure I'm doing one set instead with max intent and focus, but I'd make sure I'm doing at least a couple of warm-ups where I'm just priming my body, priming my mind before I really go all in on that one set. But I've still saved time by not doing 2 to 3 work sets on top of that. I just make sure that rather than, as I shared to our clients, rather than skimming over 3 bang average work sets, just to say you've ticked a box and you've got all your sets in, do one with full intent, lifting as heavy as you can for the target rep range, whatever the session is. Because what we've found with clients when we've picked them apart on this and then had to educate them with our way of thinking is all or nothing characters, even the highest to highest performers we coach, because they have a tendency and a desire to complete everything fully, even if their time is pressured, sometimes they would just rush through the sets at a lighter weight just to say they've completed all the sets. But I would rather someone do less, but high quality when their time is compromised, because you're still going to force the adaptation. You're going to stay stronger, keep more muscle, and mentally feel better afterwards. Simply put, especially if you're an ex-athlete or you've played sport, think like an athlete and a sportsman or woman. If you're listening to this, whether you're male or female, think and train like an athlete. And you'll know what I mean if you played sport. When you've played sport at your best, whether it's individual or team sport, you would have mentally approached that game or that sport with a different mentality. And one thing we try and get our clients to think like, and we treat them like, is to think like an athlete. So even though their priority might be business and family, a lot of them at their core are strong, physical ex-athletes, but they've just got older like me. But deep down in their heart, they're at their absolute best when they focus like an athlete when they train. And this is a great mentality to have, especially when your time is compromised. If you had a secret camera on the room filming you when you trained, would you consider yourself someone who looks like they train like an athlete or like a lazy gym goer who just coasts? I think that's one of the most disempowering things to do, is to just be a lazy gym goer that coasts, because you're never going to see progress. And if you don't see progress, you're not going to stick to it. And you don't feel good with that behavior, so you're not likely to keep doing that behavior. Right? So I would argue that even if you're someone who can only train half an hour, if you did one hard work set per each exercise in a weight session, you're going to achieve more progress in less time than the person who is training for an hour, hour and a half, but on their phone, coasting, not really getting a lot done, not getting stronger week to week, and not going all in. And just notice how much better you feel when you get that session in that you didn't think you could get done. You'll get more satisfaction from that than the sessions and the weeks that go into your calendar effortlessly. This is where consistency is built, and you build that built to last mentality, and more importantly, that built to last identity, that the gym goer, the hard training athlete type gym goer, is who you are, what you do, and how you see yourself. Then your standards outside of that in business, right, will match that. the better you conduct yourself in the gym, the harder you train, the more you push yourself, the more resilience you build, the more confidence you have, and that will carry over into every single area of life. I promise you that. So I'd love to know if there's some particular takeaways from that. If you're someone who struggles with your training, do not hesitate to reach out to me. We've got catalogues of free resources, workout examples, and YouTube clips that I can also send across to you. So thank you so much for listening. Please, I would love it if you are a consistent listener of this podcast to leave a review. I've been supremely consistent with these podcast episodes now, well over 120, not Mr. Monday, but it really does help my channel if people leave comments and share with friends. Even if you just shared with one friend my podcast today, that would mean the world to me. So thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.